a Happy Cloud audio tool.
A man getting bit by an alligator and he screams.
Ow! No, not an owl. The first one you did up here was much better. I said your money or your life. I'm thinking it over.
It's that time again for the Further Adventures of Rune, Return of the Miggins, brought to you by Happy Cloud Media and Chrome Toothpaste. Chapter 15, Not the WOODYHALL Theatre. William, I have a theater now, mother, Shakespeare, was once known throughout the land as A. Aaron Snorkler, a hack writer of considerable debt and questionable hairstyle. Through a series of outrageous circumstance and no small amount of larceny, Snorkler rebranded himself as Shakespeare, the most gifted playwright in history. He achieved this by employing a three-pronged approach to his work, not unlike a milking stool. Prong 1. Gather a group of starving writers into a single room. Never let them out. Prong 2. Put your name on everything they write. Prong 3. Get your agent/morphia dealer elected to the head of the Entertainers Guild. This method of success is better known as BTG, bribery, theft, and graft, and it worked splendidly. The theatrical district of Ilmet was called Dragonwick. It boasted no fewer than 20 theaters: proscenium, round, square, trapezoidal, rotunda, puppetorium, burlesque, music hall, peep show, and laser Floyd. And at any given time, at least 3 advertised a play said to have been written by Shakespeare. None of them actually were. Within the theatrical circles was whispered in the most mocking of tones about the Shakespeare Consortium, also known as Snorkler's hostages. But in public, none dared speak against him, or risk the wrath of the Entertainers Guild. The greatest threat to Shakespeare's entire game happened to be a humanish writer named Bill Reardon, the true author of many of Snorkler's folios, whose good name had been utterly besmirched by Snorkler and by the very guild that betrayed him. Copyright is in the eye of the committee, Bill said often. Bill's complaints and subsequent lawsuits resulted in his being blackballed from the Theatrical Society and shunned by hundreds of people who'd gotten their start with him, fleens before Snorkler even appeared on the scene. No avail. Snorkler/Shakespeare was represented by the greatest theatrical talent and morphia dealer money could buy, Alan J. Muckdweller, and he was the president for life of the Entertainers Guild. Without theater or audience or even recourse, Bill Reardon retired to the Broken Beast, where a young grey pup, living rough on the streets of Lower Hogarth, first encountered him, while trying to steal his purse and his shoes. "Keep the purse, kid," Bill said, peering at the little wolf crouched beneath the table, "but those are prescription shoes." The old man taught the wild pup culture and wit, how to devastate with words instead of fists, as words kept one out of the hooskow better than fists did. Bill had suffered great indignities at the hands of those who'd promised to protect him, but his misfortune never dampened his kindness. Reardon had succeeded where the Gesseretti had failed, and entirely accidentally. Benny tried to manipulate him into mimicking nobility. Old Bill expanded his horizons by treating Rune as an equal. In his entire life, Rune had only ever told 2 people that he loved them. One was the goddess of the underworld, and that didn't even count because he was dead at the time. The other was Bill Reardon. "Rune, my boy, normalize telling those you love that you love them," said Bill, "and never trust anyone. Keep your circle small and your heart large." Rune had no idea what the old man was talking about. Still, at the end of every evening spent listening to the man spin tales of woes and triumphs, Rune would buy him the final round, and Bill would say, "Thank you, my friend. You have my love. And you have mine, Bill." Bill Reardon had passed some fleens ago, leaving behind a body of work few remembered and a tiny bronze plaque on his seat in the Broken Beast, but also a diminutive grey wolf who'd sworn revenge on the writer's behalf, a revenge that would go unfulfilled, as Snorkler too had joined the scumbag invisible by the most insidious of natural causes. "Someday, someone is gonna find all those wretched early drafts of his," Bill said on more than one occasion. "His version of Hamlet? The prince shoots the king, the queen shoots herself, Laertes strides in and he shoots Hamlet. Fortinbras has already shot both Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. No duel, no romance. That came from my work. His Macbeth, Macduff bursts in and shoots Macbeth in the head. Midsummer Night's Dream, Titania shoots Bottom in the head. It's all he could think to end every play. Juliet shoots Romeo and then herself. The 2 Gentlemen of Verona, double suicide. It's like he got paid per bullet." On the day Bill Reardon died, Rune swore he'd never attend a single performance of an A. Aaron Snorkeler play. Even the very suggestion was taken as a personal attack. For her part, Scarlett was astonished that the Grey Wolf had allowed Father Dawn to escape with both his ignorance and limbs intact. "None of you knew, Bill," Rune said to her as the others prepared to leave for Dragonwyck. "This ain't your grudge. Just get that Blagan priest out of my sight. I'm sure he didn't know he was insulting you. Doesn't speak well of his research into my past, now does it?" "No, it doesn't," she sighed, suddenly unsure of what to do with her hands. At the end of the garden path, Dusty awaited. They still had to get back to their rented homes and change into appropriate evening wear. Time was ticking by, and with each second her guilt swelled. "Go," said Rune. "Cajole the cultists. See if you can squeeze them for concessions. Promise me you're not going to sit around drinking all night." "No." Fair enough. She knew when she was beaten. "Hey," Rune said, his ears perking up slightly. "How many dead babies does it take to fill a carriage?" Momentarily taken aback, Scarlett recovered and matched the evil smile on the Grey Wolf's muzzle. "How many? I lost track. I'll have to start over and get back to you." She didn't laugh, but pointed a finger gun at him. He pointed one back to her in return. It was how they said, "I love you," so that neither actually had to say it. Alone in his study, surrounded by the calm, sand-colored stones of Castle Sybil, Rune settled in for an evening's sulk. Despite the castle having been converted to forced air some fleens ago, Rune felt the need for a fire, and so built a cheery one at the hearth. Sitting comfortably on his favorite rug, he brought out his doom marble and then his memory stick. A product of alchemy and druidity, the memory stick was exactly what was advertised. A bit of driftwood etched with symbols of power, it was designed and manufactured to retain exact memory, sight, sound, texture, aroma, whatever needed to be preserved. Naturally, the device was co-opted and improved by Godcore,
Trademark.
as the Interactive Portable Ocular Kinetic Experience, or IPOC.
Trademark.
But Rune was never one to keep up with technology. His old memory stick worked just fine. Carefully balancing it on the top of his Palantir, Rune fired it all up. The Palantir bloomed, projecting the memory. Suddenly, his study transformed into the broken beast of 20 or more fleens past. The tavern was filled with a Mercockian array of patrons, authors and entertainers, and chanteuses and chiropodists, all holding salons at their various tables. Sidney Mosian was in his clown makeup, seated with a recently shaved Otis Driftwood, and Pluto, the barbarian-turned-florist. A tiny fire-eater posed for 6 painters, planning a mural on the privy wall. A dozen wastelanders at one table, their black tunics each emblazoned with scenes from their favorite guignols, grand or otherwise. Kilgore Trout was seated with some frizzy-haired mensch he'd met in the smoking lounge. The 4 kings of EMI were seated stately on the floor, across from their IKEA counterparts. The git with the blue hair and his 2 hot wife sat across from the proprietors of Dreamhaven Books, proving their existence even if the store was mostly mythological. And, at the back of the room, Bill Reardon, where he usually held court. With a deep breath, Rune stepped into the memory, becoming again the wet-eared pup he was when he and Bill first met. Though he'd not grown substantially in the subsequent fleens, Rune felt smaller, slighter. He climbed into an empty chair next to the old poet. A flagon of lager was waiting for him, just as it had been when the memory was made. But this was not to be an echo passively noticed. Rune needed something else from this memory, and thus began to alter it. "Good evening, Bill," he said. Bill Reardon appeared as he had in life, not a tall man but large in spirit. Wrapped in his dark seafarer's coat, beret upon his head, smiling broadly through a thatch of beard that was more salt than pepper these days. "Rune, my friend," seizing the now young again wolf's paw with both of his age-smoothed hands. "So good of you to join us this evening. Bill, I'm about to go on another campaign, and I may not come back from this one." "Really?" said Bill. "Geez, I hope that's not true. Please be careful, we need you around here." "Bill," Rune said, his voice suddenly thick with useless emotion. I failed you." "What are you talking about, my friend?" I never cleared your name. Snorkeler's still on all the plays. You get a mention here and there. He's still the star." "That son of a bitch," said Bill with less rancor than Rune expected. Usually when you mentioned Snorkeler's name, Bill's voice would boom with sudden anger, then dissipate as quickly. In this altered memory, he scarcely sounded concerned. "Ha! I'm dead, aren't I? Wherever you are, it's not now, is it?" Rune nodded. Bill smiled. "Listen, my friend, love means never having to say you're sorry, right? Terrible book, but great message. You didn't fail me, Rune. You never stopped believing in me. You were a hard lesson, Bill. When I think of you, I start believing everyone is worth believing in. It's not such a bad thing, friend. You just make sure you keep the receipts. Like you did. Every draft I ever wrote. Every memory stick recording I ever made. It wasn't stolen by Snorkeler or the damn Sans Sums, of course. You never stop beating your drums, Bill. And you have your own drums to beat." Reardon smiled. He took a long drag from a Frodis joint, his last remaining vice. From his flagon, Rune knew, Bill drank only tea, no longer the hard-drinking man he'd been. Just as Rune, in his study, lost in his eye memory, was no longer the callous barbarian he once was. Listen, Rune, you can't worry about me now. You can't worry about any regrets or any sins you still carry around. We aren't kids anymore. I'm dead, you're vulnerable, but you still have things you got to do. Don't add my woes to yours. My time is done. But your work should still live on. Let me ask you something. What's your occupation? Rune wasn't sure how to answer. Mostly, I go in the old tombs and steal stuff. You uncover history. Sure, that's another way of looking at it. Bill spread his hands wide and smiled just as broadly. I'm history. I'll be rediscovered. He laughed then, and in spite of himself, Rune laughed right along with him, and the faceless memory of people joined in as well. Isn't that marvelous? Nothing's dead forever. Their memory began to fade just then, the stick reaching the end of the recording. Of all the people who were ever in my life, said Bill Reardon, his image shimmering, becoming transparent, wispy, and foggy, you can take heart in the fact that you were one of the very few who never let me down. Never forget that. The last few words echoed as time winnowed back to the present. Once again, Rune was alone in his study, his shadow dancing in the firelight, the Palantir gone dark, and the memory relegated to the purgatory of the eye poke.
Trademark.
In 2 days, Rune would descend into the many layers of hell, certain that he'd see old Bill Reardon in none of them. Chapter 16, this time at the WOODYHALL Theatre. WOODYHALL, one of the largest theaters in the theater district of Dragonwyck. Curtains opulent, but cloaked with the dust of history. Its stage bowed slightly in center right. Domed ceilings utterly blackened by decaflames of torchfire. Remarkably drafty in spite of close-set seating, none of which, by some quirk of quantum physics, directly faced the stage. Owned by Mr. Zero, a gregarious scoundrel whose plump face would start out sweet and kind and innocent as a baby, and then swiftly contort into bulge-eyed swells of rage. A loon about town. While the great thespian and occasional cult leader, Edward Kendall Sheridan Lionheart, acted literal and physical circles around his co-stars as Pa Leontes, opposite his wife Edwina as Hermione Onassis. In The Winter Kills Tales by Bill Reardon and William Shakespeare, Scarlett squirmed uncomfortably in her chair, and not just because she'd forgotten to switch out of her chainmail knickers. The guilt was overwhelming. Guilt. Born a warrior, raised an athlete, trained in espionage, no slouch a pilot, a shredder on lead guitar, okay on drums, a Primazon, a Valkyrie, and one of the top 50 sexiest married war heroes of Trogdine, so named by Thirst Trap magazine. Guilt? She'd killed dozens of people in battle and several in repose. She was a shadow scale, a secret agent of balance for the Soren Gazir, something that only 4 people outside that particular organization knew, and her husband was one of them. Still, guilt, because she was sitting in an uncomfortable and drafty theater watching a play she'd seen before and done better, feeling like she was betraying one of her closest surviving friends. Though she'd never met Bill Reardon, she knew the number of people Rune spoke of with affection, and could count them on one hand and still have the middle finger left for saluting the rest. As Rune had pledged to her once, had grudgingly admitted to Dusty, and drunkenly swore to the Gax, and 3 times to Izzy the Frotus dealer at the Beast, your enemies are mine. Thus, by the transient properties of blood oaths and friendship, William Shakespeare, enemy of Bill Reardon and Rune, was enemy to Scarlett and by proxy of vendetta, the Primazons of Tu Obscura, should it go that far. Good thing Snorkler was dead. Are you bored, my love? Dusty whispered. Shred your program like a Leland fan. It's fun. He held up a handful of confetti. He'd taken it too far. She poofed it into his face and squeezed his hand, feeling the fur crunch within his glove. I feel like we're betraying Rune. He squeezed her hand in return. He doesn't. She frowned. Dusty tried again. Feel that way. About you. Or us. Doing this. So don't. She got it. They'd been married for fleens. Sitting in silence as Lionheart went on, Scarlett snickered in spite of herself. What is it? Dusty asked. She leaned in close, whispered into his silky ear. How many dead babies does it take to fill a bathtub? She turned her head so that he could respond, sticking his cold, wet nose into the hollow of her neck, quickly warmed by his breath. I don't know, my love, but we could find out together. And that's why she married him. Now that's what we call character development. Join us next week at whatever time you want for the Further Adventures of Rune.